He's the one keeping me warm tonight. The words cut through the air like a knife. I heard them clearly, spoken in a tone of indifference, as if she was talking about the weather. She didn't even try to lower her voice. It was almost like she didn't care whether I heard or not. I was in the living room, just getting ready to grab my coat when I heard it. The sound of her voice, casual and relaxed, drifting from the kitchen, where she was talking on the phone. He's the one keeping me warm tonight. The phrase was so cold, so matter-of-fact, it made my blood run cold. I could feel my body freeze, not out of fear, but from something deeper, something much worse. It didn't take a genius to figure out what she meant. I could hear the quiet laugh in her voice, that playful, seductive laugh she used to save for me. But now it wasn't for me. It was for him, whoever he was. I stayed where I was, my eyes fixed on the door, not knowing whether to go to her or just let it sink in. I needed answers. I wanted to shout, to ask who the hell she was talking about, but I didn't. I waited. A few moments passed, and then I heard her footsteps. She walked past me, acting like everything was normal, like nothing had changed. I looked at her, but she didn't even glance in my direction. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice steady, but it didn't feel steady. It felt like everything inside me was on the edge of exploding. She stopped, just for a second, and turned her head slightly. "Who's who?" Her voice was smooth, a little too smooth, like she was rehearsing the lie. "The guy? The one you're with. Who is he?" I repeated, trying to make her understand that I wasn't going to let it slide. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she just stared at me, as if I were the one being ridiculous. And then, as if to dismiss me, she gave a shrug. "Does it matter? It's Troy. He's from the studio." Troy. The name meant nothing to me. Not at first. But now everything clicked. The late nights she'd been having at the studio, the sudden distance between us, the way she'd been avoiding me. And now, she was admitting it like it was nothing. "You've been seeing him for how long?" I asked, though it felt like a stupid question. It didn't matter how long it had been. It was happening now. She looked at me with that same, detached look she had been giving me lately. "A while. And it's not like you've been paying attention anyway." She turned to walk away, like it was the end of the conversation. Like she had already made up her mind. But I wasn't done. "Not yet. Is this it? Are you just done with me then?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She stopped again, this time longer, and finally looked at me with that smug expression. "Yeah, I'm done. You can't give me what I need, Mike. I'm with someone who can." Just like that, it was over. She wasn't even trying to hide it, wasn't even pretending to care. She had already made her choice, and there was no room for me in it. The next few minutes felt like hours. She walked to the living room, looking through her phone as if she didn't just destroy everything we built. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. The way she brushed me off. The way she talked about Troy as if he was someone more important than me. As if everything I was to her didn't matter. I stood there, still processing what she had said, but it wasn't enough. It couldn't be. I needed more. This was happening too fast for me to accept, too quickly to just let her walk away like this. She was still acting like it wasn't a big deal, that she wasn't just ripping apart everything that was mine, everything I thought was ours. I couldn't let her get away with it, not after everything. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much of this I had missed. The late nights, the sudden disappearances, the lack of affection, it all made sense now. She had been slipping away for months, pulling herself further and further from me, and I hadn't even seen it. I didn't want to see it. I had believed the lies, just like I believed in us. I couldn't stand it anymore. "What do you mean, you're done? Just like that? You think I'm going to let you just walk away from this? From me?" I asked, my voice rising, not with rage, but with something far worse, disbelief. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Yeah, I do. You were never there, Mike. Not really. I tried, but you weren't paying attention. Troy makes me feel alive. He gets me." Her words stung, but the coldness in her tone was worse. She wasn't even ashamed. She wasn't even sorry. It was like she was talking about switching from one brand of cereal to another, as if I wasn't even a person to her anymore, just a thing she could toss aside. "You think he gets you?" I repeated, moving closer to her. I didn't care that she was avoiding me. I wasn't going to let her just push me aside. "You're just going to throw everything away for him? For someone you met at a studio?" She finally looked up at me, and there it was again, the smugness, the arrogance, the look of someone who thought they had already won. "Yes, Mike. That's exactly what I'm doing. And you can't stop it." She said it like she had been planning this all along. She had made her decision, and I was the last person she cared about. The man who had loved her, trusted her, gave her everything. He didn't matter anymore. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was deeper than that. She had emotionally checked out long before I had any idea. I took a step back, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. Was this all there was? Was I just a stepping stone for her to get what she wanted? Did she even care about me at all? I can't believe you're doing this to me, I muttered, barely able to keep my voice steady. I looked at her, but she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was back on her phone, probably texting him, probably already planning the next time they'd meet. I didn't know how long I stood there in silence. It felt like an eternity. I kept waiting for her to feel something, to show some sign of regret. But there was nothing. It was just me, standing there, watching her tear my world apart, and not even bat an eye. She stood up from the couch, still scrolling through her phone, her back turned to me. She was already thinking about something else, like this moment didn't matter at all. Look, Mike, I'm sorry you couldn't keep up. But I'm not sorry for me. I'm happy with him. You can't change that. I couldn't take it anymore. So, this is how you're going to end it? Like it's nothing? Just walk away like I don't mean anything to you. The words were coming faster now, but I wasn't sure if I was even making sense. She didn't respond right away. She just shook her head and laughed softly, like I was the one being ridiculous. It's not personal, Mike. It's just that you're not what I need anymore. You never were. Her words felt like a punch to the gut. I had never expected this from her, not in a million years. But now, the truth was right in front of me, and I had no choice but to face it. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, but it was impossible. Everything inside me was screaming, urging me to make her see what she had done, to make her realize the mess she had made of everything. But there was no point in that. She had already made up her mind, and she didn't care. I stepped closer, my hands clenched at my sides. I don't know who you are anymore, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. You're not the woman I married. You're just someone else. And I don't know how I let this happen. She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed her coat from the chair and started heading for the door. I'm leaving now, she said, her voice cold, distant, as if she was just going through the motions. You can stay here and mope, but I'm done. You can figure out the rest. As she walked out the door, I stood frozen in place. The sound of her heels clicking on the floor was the last thing I heard before the door slammed shut behind her. The woman I had spent years with, the woman I had loved, was gone. Just like that. And I was left standing there, in the silence, alone with the mess she had made. The next few days passed in a blur of disbelief and frustration. She was gone, and she wasn't coming back. There was no more pretending, no more trying to convince myself that things would go back to normal. The life I thought we had, my life, our life, had crumbled right in front of me, and all I was left with was the wreckage. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the cold indifference in her eyes when she told me she was done. I thought about Troy, the man who had taken her from me. I didn't know him, but I could imagine the type of person he was. He was the kind of guy who knew exactly what to say, what to do. He had swooped in, taking advantage of everything I didn't see. I started to go through the house, trying to find something, anything, that would explain how this had happened. How had I missed it? Where did I go wrong? She hadn't just woken up one morning and decided to leave me. This had been brewing for a long time, and I had been too blind to see it. As I went through the drawers, looking for some sign of her betrayal, I found her phone. She had left it on the kitchen counter before she stormed out, and it was just sitting there, waiting. I picked it up, my hands shaking. I knew it wasn't the right thing to do, but at that moment, I didn't care. I had to know the truth, even if it hurt. The phone was unlocked. Of course it was. She had nothing to hide, or at least she thought she didn't. The first thing I saw was a text message from Troy. My stomach turned. The words were flippant, casual, like they had known each other forever. Can't wait to see you later. I'll make sure you're warm all night. There it was again. The same phrase she had used with me, except this time, it wasn't just some passing remark. It was a promise. A promise to keep her warm, to give her everything I couldn't. The anger bubbled up inside me again, but I forced it down. I scrolled through the rest of the conversation, each text more sickening than the last. She had been planning this for weeks, maybe months. She had been hiding it all from me, while I had been blindly trusting her. She hadn't just cheated on me. She had built a whole new life with Troy, and I had been the fool living in the dark. I couldn't stand it anymore. I needed answers. I needed to confront him. I needed to know what he had that I didn't. I grabbed my keys and stormed out of the house, heading straight for the studio. The thought of confronting Troy, of finding out the man who had stolen my wife, made my blood boil, but I couldn't sit around anymore. I had to do something. I had to get it out of my system, or I would never move on from this. The studio wasn't far, just a few miles away. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I drove, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. The thought of seeing Troy, of looking him in the eye and demanding answers, filled me with a strange mixture of rage and desperation. When I arrived, I parked my car and walked straight toward the entrance. The place was quiet, as it usually was. There were no signs of life, no music blaring through the walls. But I knew Troy was in there. I could feel it. I didn't bother knocking. I walked right into the studio, bursting through the door with no plan in mind. But when I saw him, sitting there, leaning back in his chair, looking so casual, it hit me all at once. Troy didn't even flinch. He didn't look surprised, didn't look afraid. In fact, he looked like he was expecting me. He didn't even bother to get up. He just sat there, staring at me with a cocky smirk on his face, like he owned the place. "Mike," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I was wondering when you'd show up." The nerve of this guy. He wasn't even bothered by my presence. In that moment, I realized something. He didn't care about me. He didn't care that I was standing there, in front of him, furious and broken. He didn't care about anything except getting what he wanted. I took a step forward, trying to keep my voice steady. "You think this is funny, huh? You think you can just come in and take everything I had?" Troy just laughed, shaking his head. "You really don't get it, do you? She didn't want you anymore. She chose me. I didn't take anything from you. She gave it to me." His words cut through me, but they were true. Kim had chosen him. She had made her decision long before I ever figured it out. But hearing it from him, hearing it so plainly, made me feel smaller than I ever had before. "I'm not done with you yet," I growled, my fists clenching at my sides. Troy didn't even flinch. "Do whatever you need to do, man. But don't think you can scare me. I'm not the one who lost her." I stood there, seething. But something inside me clicked. This wasn't about Troy. It wasn't about him at all. This was about me. And it was time I stopped playing the victim. I turned on my heel and walked out of the studio without saying another word. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I had a plan now, and I wasn't going to let either of them get away with this. I spent the next few days planning my next move, although, to be honest, I didn't really need to plan much. It wasn't about complex strategies or complicated moves. It was about taking back what was mine. I had been the fool, the one who didn't see the signs. But now, it was time for me to do something about it. I couldn't just let Kim get away with treating me like I was nothing. She didn't get to just walk out of our life and leave me broken while she went off with Troy. No, I wasn't going to let her think that was the end of it. I started by digging deeper into Troy's life. I needed to know more about him, where he lived, what he did, everything. I wasn't going to let this guy slide into my life without facing the consequences. I spent hours searching for details, doing everything I could to piece together the puzzle that was Troy. I wasn't looking for trouble. I just wanted to know who this man was, the man who had so easily taken my wife, my life. The more I found out, the more disgusted I became. Troy wasn't just some random guy who Kim had met at a party. He was a man with connections, a man with power, and he used it to get whatever he wanted. I started to understand why Kim had fallen for him. He was everything I wasn't: charming, confident, and ruthless. He was the kind of man who could manipulate people without even trying. But that's what made it worse. I wasn't even mad at him. I was mad at myself for letting her go, for thinking we were happy when she was already slipping away, running off with someone else. I had to do something. I had to make sure they both knew that I wasn't just going to sit back and let them destroy everything. The idea came to me as I was pacing the house late one night, thinking about how much I had lost. There was one thing I could do to make them feel what I was feeling, the sting of betrayal. I wasn't going to hurt Kim directly. No, I was smarter than that. I was going to hit them where it would hurt the most: Troy's career. I knew that Troy's reputation was everything to him. His image, his music, the fame, it was all he had. And I knew exactly how to ruin it. I spent hours researching everything I could find about him: his studio, his business partners, his fan base. I found out about his upcoming shows, his new album release. I found out about everything he had worked so hard to build. And then I began making calls. I called in favors. I contacted people who could get things done quietly. I wasn't going to break the law, but I wasn't afraid to use my influence to get my message across. I made sure that the right people knew about Troy's cheating ways, his lack of loyalty, and his shady dealings. It wasn't hard to dig up dirt on someone like him. People like Troy often left a trail of wreckage behind them. It didn't take long before the first cracks in his perfect image started to show. A few social media posts, a couple of rumors, and suddenly, people were questioning his integrity. His fans started to turn on him. The studio canceled his upcoming bookings. The record label started to question his loyalty. The people he had worked with began to drop him one by one. His world was beginning to collapse. I could feel a sense of satisfaction as I watched it all unfold. I didn't even have to say a word to Kim. She would find out soon enough. She would see the chaos unfolding around her precious Troy, and she would know that I was the one responsible. But I didn't stop there. I wanted her to feel this too. I wanted her to realize that no matter how far she ran, no matter how much she tried to escape, I was always going to be there, just waiting for her to make the wrong move. So, I started with the house. I wasn't just going to let her take everything. I had bought that house. I had paid for everything inside it. It was mine, and I wasn't going to let her take it all without consequences. I called my lawyer and started the process of freezing our joint accounts, making sure she couldn't access anything without my permission. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had been blinded by love. How had I let her get away with everything? She had lied to me for so long, and I had been too blind to see it. I had trusted her, loved her, and in return, she had destroyed me. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not this time. The next day, I got the call I had been waiting for. Troy had been dropped by his record label. His concerts were canceled. His reputation was in shambles. And then, I got another call. Kim was calling me. She wanted to talk. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. But I wasn't going to let her get away without facing the consequences of her actions. "Mike, we need to talk," she said, her voice shaky. "I think you already said everything you needed to say, Kim," I replied, my voice cold. There was a pause on the other end of the line before she spoke again. "I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't know what you were going to do." "Oh, I'm just getting started." I hung up the phone, knowing this was far from over. The game had changed. And now, it was time for Kim to face the consequences of her betrayal. It had been a few days since I made sure Troy's world started to crumble. I was sitting in the silence of my living room, scrolling through my phone, watching his career falter. The texts, the rumors, the cancellations, it was all happening faster than I anticipated. And yet, I felt no relief. In fact, there was a strange emptiness that sat heavily on my chest, like the weight of everything I had done was just starting to sink in. I hadn't heard from Kim after my call, and I didn't expect to. But then my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number at first, but I knew it was her before I even answered. I pressed the phone to my ear. "Mike," she began, her voice shaky, almost pleading. "We need to talk." I didn't respond at first. I was waiting for her to say something, anything, that could explain her actions, but I already knew there was no excuse. She had made her choice, and so had I. But I let her continue anyway. "I know what you did," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't think you would go this far." I leaned back in my chair, the words coming slowly, deliberately. "Oh, you didn't think I'd fight back? What did you expect, Kim? That I'd just roll over and let you walk all over me? You think I was going to sit idly by while you ran off with Troy? You made your choice, and now you have to live with it." There was silence on the other end of the line, a pause so long I almost thought she had hung up. But then, she spoke again, her voice quieter this time. "You don't understand. This isn't about him," she said. "This is about us. You and me. Us." I repeated, the word almost tasting bitter on my tongue. "There is no us anymore. You ended that the moment you decided to cheat on me, Kim. You didn't just break my heart. You destroyed everything we had. You took everything. Our marriage, our trust, our future, and you handed it over to him. I'm done with your excuses." I could hear her breathing heavily on the other end. It was obvious she was trying to keep it together, but I could tell she was breaking. And I felt nothing. Nothing but a cold sense of satisfaction that I wasn't the only one hurting anymore. "I made a mistake," she said, finally. "I was lost, Mike. I felt neglected, like you didn't see me anymore. Troy, he made me feel seen. He made me feel alive." I laughed bitterly. "You weren't neglected, Kim. You were selfish. You didn't care about me or us. You just cared about what you could get. And now look where it's gotten you. Troy's career is over, his life is falling apart, and you're left with nothing. What did he promise you? That he'd make you feel special? Well, guess what? Now, you're nothing but a joke to him, too. He's got his own problems now, and you're the one who has to deal with them. Her silence was deafening, but it didn't last long. She finally spoke, her voice shaking with frustration. I never wanted this to happen. I didn't want to hurt you, Mike. But I did. And now I see that. But you have to understand. I was just trying to find something I lost. Something I didn't even know I was missing. I wasn't interested in her reasons anymore. I wasn't interested in the lies or the justifications. What was done, and I wasn't going to sit here and listen to her try to convince me that it wasn't her fault. You don't get to make excuses for this, Kim. It's not about what you lost. You were supposed to be my partner, my wife. And now, you're just another woman who couldn't keep her promises. You broke everything, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it didn't happen. The words spilled out of me without thinking. It was almost as if I had been holding them in for years, waiting for the right moment to let them go. And now, here I was, finally saying everything that had been bottled up inside. You don't get to blame me for your mistakes. You don't get to pretend that you didn't have a choice. This was your decision, Kim. You wanted out, and now you're getting it. No more excuses, no more apologies. The line was quiet for a moment, but then she spoke again, softer this time. I don't know what to say, Mike, she whispered. I don't know how to fix this. But I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for what I did. I let out a slow breath, steadying myself. Her apology meant nothing to me now. The damage was done, and there was no going back. You're sorry? I asked, my voice laced with disbelief. You think an apology is going to fix what you did? Do you really believe that? It's too late for that, Kim. It's too late for anything. I didn't wait for her to respond. I hung up the phone, the weight of the conversation settling over me. She was sorry. I didn't care. She was sorry, but she wasn't the one who had to live with the mess she made. I was. And now I was done. The next few days were filled with a numbness I couldn't shake. The anger from earlier had faded into something darker, something more final. It wasn't just the betrayal anymore. It was the realization that Kim had never truly been mine. I had given everything to her, and in return, she had taken it all and handed it to someone else. There was nothing left but a hollow shell of what once was. I spent my time watching Troy's downfall unfold. The posts, the articles, the whispers, all of it was coming for him, and I was the one orchestrating it. Watching him squirm in the public, I brought a twisted sense of satisfaction, but I knew it was temporary. It was just a matter of time before the whole thing would die down, and he'd crawl back into his hole, only to emerge again with another false smile and another fake apology. I didn't care about him anymore. What bothered me most was that Kim hadn't reached out, not after everything I had done. She was probably too proud, too ashamed to face the mess she had created. She hadn't even tried to fix anything. She just expected me to roll over and take it. I wasn't going to do that, though. Not anymore. She had made her choice, and now, it was time for me to make mine. I'd thought about confronting her again, but the more I thought about it, the less I wanted to. What would it accomplish? She had nothing to offer me anymore. No apologies, no explanations. She had already walked out on me once, and she'd do it again if I let her back into my life. The only thing left to do was to move on and make sure she knew exactly what she had lost. That's when I decided to hit her where it hurt. I wasn't going to waste any more time trying to figure out what had gone wrong between us. There was no need for closure, no need for any more pointless conversations. I'd spent too much of my life trying to hold on to a marriage that was already over. So, I made the call. I had a lawyer who specialized in these kinds of things: divorce, property division, everything. I was going to make sure she got nothing. I wasn't going to be left empty-handed. I called the lawyer's office, setting up an appointment to start the paperwork. I wasn't going to settle for anything less than what I deserved. Kim had taken everything she wanted, and now it was my turn to take it all back. I wasn't about to let her get away with destroying everything we had, not without consequences. The lawyer assured me that the process would be swift, and that's all I needed to hear. The moment I signed those papers, it would be over for good. I would finally be free of her lies, her deceit, and her manipulation. As I hung up the phone, I glanced at the pictures on the wall, pictures of a life I no longer recognized. Those happy moments, the vacations, the family gatherings, they all felt like they belonged to someone else. I wasn't that person anymore. And Kim? She wasn't the woman I married, either. She was a stranger to me now. I didn't waste any more time thinking about her. It was done. I went to the lawyer's office the next day and started the paperwork. It was a cold, clinical process, but it felt good. The paperwork was in motion, and there was no going back. I wasn't going to let her walk away unscathed. I would make sure she knew what it felt like to lose everything. That night, as I sat at home, waiting for the paperwork to go through, I got another call. It was Kim. Her number flashed on my screen, but this time, I didn't feel any inclination to answer. I let it ring, the buzzing growing more persistent until I finally turned the phone off. I had heard enough from her. There was nothing more to say. I wasn't the same person anymore. The man who had trusted her, the man who had believed in her, he was gone. I had built a wall around myself, one that couldn't be torn down. And if she thought for 1 second that she could come back into my life and pick up where we left off, she was gravely mistaken. It was over. I hadn't fully realized it until that moment. But sitting in the silence of my home, knowing that I was finally taking control of my life again, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. The chaos she had caused had begun to settle, and in its place, there was a calm certainty. I wasn't going to be her victim anymore. I was going to make my own choices, and if she thought she could tear my life apart, she was about to find out just how wrong she was. Kim had made her decision, and now, I was making mine. The paperwork was done. I had filed for divorce, and the legal battle was underway. I felt detached from everything around me as the process unfolded. At first, there had been a sense of urgency, of needing to make sure everything was in place to get the justice I felt I deserved. But now, with the wheels of the system turning, I was left with a feeling I hadn't anticipated: relief. I spent my days focused on the process, but my nights were filled with restless thoughts about Kim. I had given up on expecting any remorse from her. She had moved on, and now it was my turn. I wasn't going to let her dictate my emotions anymore. The anger, the betrayal, it was all fading away, replaced by a strange sense of freedom. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had control again. But then, she called again. It was a late evening when I saw her name flash on my phone. I stared at it for a moment before answering, unsure of what I was going to hear this time. The tone of her voice was different this time, softer, almost hesitant. "Mike," she started, her voice shaky. "I don't know what you think of me, but I'm not the same person you remember. I've made mistakes, and I can't undo them. But I want you to understand something. I never meant to hurt you." I leaned back in my chair, listening to her. There was a moment of silence on the line before she spoke again. "I know I messed up, Mike. But everything I did was because I felt like you stopped seeing me. I felt invisible, like I wasn't enough for you anymore." Her words stung, but I was no longer the man I had been when we first met. I had heard this before, this same excuse, wrapped in the same empty promises. "Kim, you're wrong," I said, my voice calm but firm. "It wasn't about me not seeing you. It was about you choosing him over me. You didn't just feel invisible. You were too selfish to care about anything other than yourself. You destroyed what we had, and I can't go back to that." "I was stupid," she continued, her voice barely a whisper. "I thought I could find happiness with someone else. But I was wrong. I've lost everything. And now, I'm asking you for one last chance." I let her words sink in, but nothing changed. No amount of apologies, no amount of pleading, was going to change what she had done. She didn't deserve another chance. She had already made her decision, and now, I was making mine. "I'm done, Kim," I said, the words finally coming easily. "There's no going back for us. You wanted to be with him, and you made that choice. Now, you have to live with it. I don't have anything left to give." She was silent for a long moment, and I knew that she had understood. The finality in my voice had made it clear. "I'm sorry, Mike," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of regret and sadness. "I never meant for it to end this way. You don't get to apologize for what you did." "Not anymore," I replied. "Goodbye, Kim." I ended the call without waiting for a response. I didn't need to hear anything else. There was no more to say, and no more to feel. As the silence of the house settled around me, I realized that I was finally free. I had gone through the pain, the betrayal, and the heartbreak, and now it was over. Kim was gone, and so was the life I thought we'd built together. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of closure. It wasn't the kind of closure I had imagined, the kind where everything was fixed, where the pain went away. No, this was something different. It was the kind of closure that came from realizing that the only person who could rebuild my life now was me. The next morning, I woke up to a new day. I didn't have to worry about Kim or Troy or anything related to my past. I was free to move on, to start over, to rebuild everything I had lost. And I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me again. There was a part of me that wondered if Kim would ever regret what she had done. But that was no longer my concern. She had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. As for me, I was ready for what came next. I didn't need her anymore. I was strong enough to move on. And this time, I was going to do it on my terms. It's strange, isn't it? How someone can be such a huge part of your life one day, and then, just like that, they're gone. I spent so long trying to understand how I ended up here, how my whole world could have been turned upside down. But after everything had settled, the papers were signed, the silence had replaced the arguments, and I could finally breathe again. I realized something. I had been waiting for the wrong things. I had been waiting for an apology that would never come. I had been waiting for some form of closure from Kim that, in reality, wasn't even possible. I spent months looking for answers, trying to piece together the mess she left behind, but I didn't need any of it anymore. There was no point in wasting any more time. It was over. And now, I was finally free. I started doing things for myself again. I had forgotten what it felt like to live for me, without the constant weight of Kim's decisions hanging over my head. The first thing I did was fix the house. It had always felt like our place, our home. But now it felt like a place that didn't belong to either of us. I stripped away the things she left behind. The gifts, the pictures, the mementos that held too many memories of a life I didn't recognize anymore. I didn't need them. Slowly but surely, I made the place my own again. I painted the walls, rearranged the furniture, and finally started to feel like I was taking control of my life again. The clutter that had built up in the house over the years mirrored the clutter that had been in my mind, and it felt good to clear both away. But as much as I tried to focus on myself, the temptation to look back at my past kept sneaking in. Sometimes I found myself thinking about Kim, wondering where she was, what she was doing. It didn't take long for me to realize that those thoughts were a trap. Every time I thought about her, I was putting myself back into the past, where I didn't belong anymore. I didn't need to waste any more energy on someone who didn't care about me. I started working out again, focusing on my health. For months, I had let myself slip, getting caught up in the sadness of it all. But I wasn't going to let that define me anymore. Every rep at the gym, every run in the morning, was me reclaiming something I had lost, not just my body, but my confidence, my sense of self. It felt good to be strong again. It felt good to know that I was taking care of myself, without relying on anyone else to do it for me. I got back in touch with friends, too. I'd let some of my relationships fade away while I was wrapped up in my marriage. But now, I had the time to reconnect. I spent weekends with old friends, enjoying life again, laughing like I hadn't in years. It wasn't the same as before, but I was learning to enjoy the freedom of being on my own. Work became my next focus. I threw myself into projects I had put off, things I had ignored for months. There was a fire inside me now, a drive to succeed and build something for myself that was all my own. I poured my energy into my career, and slowly but surely, I started to see the results. The recognition, the accomplishments. I was finally building something that felt worthwhile. Then, about a month into my new routine, I got an unexpected call. It was from Troy. At first, I thought it was a mistake, a number that I misread, but then I heard his voice on the other end. The sound of it made me bristle with anger, but I didn't let it show. "Mike, I need to talk to you," Troy said, his voice nervous. I took a deep breath. "What is it, Troy? I know we've had our differences, and I know what happened between us, but I'm not here to talk about Kim. I just need to say that I never meant for any of this to happen. I got caught up in it, but I've lost everything, too. I'm not the same guy anymore. I've hit rock bottom." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I expected an apology for what he did to me, for how he stole Kim away, but I didn't get that. Instead, he was telling me about his own downfall, his own regrets. Part of me felt satisfaction, but another part just felt pity. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I wasn't sure what to say. I'd never expected this from him, but the more I thought about it, the less I cared. "I'm done with Kim, man," Troy continued. "She used me just like she used you. I didn't realize it until it was too late, but she's not worth the trouble. I don't know what she promised you, but she wasn't ever going to be loyal to anyone. I'm just sorry I got involved in this mess. I didn't know if he was telling the truth, but I didn't care enough to ask. This wasn't about him anymore. This wasn't about any of them. Yeah, well, I said, cutting him off. I don't need you to apologize, Troy. I don't need anything from you. There was a long pause on the other end. I could tell he was waiting for me to say something, but I had nothing left to give him. This was his mess now, and it had nothing to do with me. I get it, he finally said, and there was a sense of finality in his voice. I just thought you should know. I won't bother you again. I ended the call without another word. And just like that, I was done with it all. Kim, Troy, the mess they left behind. It was in the past, and I wasn't going to let it pull me under anymore. The freedom I felt now was mine, and I wasn't going to let anything or anyone take that away from me.